Round one in the fight for the Tory leadership, the result expected any moment. 5 candidates are battling it out for the right to replace David Cameron as Prime Minister. One of them will be knocked out in the next few moments.
So tonight, here we go again, a threat of more strikes as doctors reject the new deal with the government.
It makes it very difficult for us as a government to know who we should negotiate with, or indeed whether there's any point in having these negotiations.
The pound plummets again, and the Bank of England warns of challenging economic times ahead.
And come on, Wales. The History Boys on the brink of a footballing sensation.
This is the ITV Evening News with Mark Austin and Mary Nightingale.
Good evening. The prize is to become the next Prime Minister, and in the next few minutes the results of the first round of voting in the Conservative leadership ballot are due to be announced. Tory MPs have been casting votes all day for who they want to be their next leader and succeed David Cameron in Downing Street. Theresa May is the current favourite.
The candidate with the fewest votes will be dropped from the contest tonight. In just a moment, we'll have the very latest from our political editor, Robert Peston, inside the House of Parliament. But first, Libby Vina reports on a tense day for the 5 candidates.
Home Secretary, is this your new home?
Is this your new home, they shouted. Premature, perhaps, but Theresa May is the woman to beat. Few are talking up the chances now of her cabinet colleague Michael Gove after he turned assassin last week and put paid to Boris Johnson's hopes. But it seems he's still feeling lucky.
Can you still win, Mr. Gove?
The real threat to the Home Secretary comes from Andrea Leadsom, a former banker who's picking up support from MPs who voted leave.
And you're feeling confident?
Absolutely.
The ballot opened at 11 this morning, the start of a process to choose not just a Tory leader, but a new Prime Minister. By lunchtime today, more than 3/4 of Tory MPs had voted, a sign that there is now a real sense of urgency about choosing a new leader and ending the political chaos that has effectively paralysed government for nearly 2 weeks. Conservative MPs had 5 nominees to choose from. Today, the candidate with the fewest votes will be eliminated. MPs vote again on Thursday and next Tuesday until only 2 candidates remain. There will then be a postal vote of the wider membership, with the new Tory leader and Prime Minister expected to be announced by September the 9th. Former Defence Secretary Liam Fox could be the first to be eliminated, but was putting on a brave face earlier.
I've never thrown the towel in my entire life, and I'm not starting now, and I'm intending to fight for all the votes I can get.
As the day progressed, it was clear Theresa May was picking up votes, including from pro-Brexit MPs.
She's a very, very experienced politician. She's held one of the toughest briefs in British politics for 6 years without really putting a foot wrong.
But some were sticking with the Justice Secretary, Michael Gove.
We need someone with the mettle to drive this decision through, handle these negotiations properly, and I believe that Michael Gove's best placed to do it.
So he hasn't blown his chances, in your view?
Well, we'll see when the votes come in.
One vote he couldn't count on was this man's.
Why didn't you pick Michael Gove?
Because Andrea Leadsom, I think, has got all the qualities that we need at the moment. She's got a lot of zap, a lot of drive.
But who has the votes? We'll know in just a few minutes' time. Libby Vina, ITV News, Westminster.
OK, the result was announced just a couple of seconds ago, and the result is as follows. Theresa May has 165 votes, Andrea Leadsom 66, Michael Gove 48, Stephen Crabb 34, Liam Fox 16.
So a clear win on that round for Theresa May. Let's go to our political editor, Robert Peston, in the House of Commons this evening. So, Robert, first of all, what do you make of those numbers?
Well, it's very clear that Theresa May will go to the runoff with party members. She polled precisely half of the votes of all Tory MPs. She is way ahead of the rest of the field. Liam Fox at the bottom drops out. And the interesting question is where his votes go. If they go to Michael Gove, the controversial MP who is seen to have betrayed Boris Johnson, then that would put Michael Gove and Andrea Leadsom absolutely neck and neck. They're both ahead of Stephen Crabb, and I think we can assume that Stephen Crabb will drop out on Thursday, and then there will be this tight race between Andrea Leadsom and Michael Gove to go through to the last round. And as I say, right now, it's clear that Theresa May will be one of the candidates to be Tory leader or the next Prime Minister. Not so clear right now whether it'll be Michael Gove or Andrea Leadsom that she will be facing in that runoff, in that vote of Tory members.
All right, intriguing stuff. Robert, thank you very much indeed.
OK, you may have thought the doctors' dispute was over. Well, that's certainly what the government hoped. But tonight, the NHS in England is facing a new crisis after junior doctors voted to reject the deal the British Medical Association had tentatively agreed with the Health Secretary.
It means the government may now impose the contract and further strikes are back on the cards. Jeremy Hunt said he was extremely disappointed by the doctors' decision. Our health editor, Rachel Younger, has the latest.
Just 2 months ago, both sides dared to hope all this was behind them. Instead, what lies ahead are fresh recriminations and worry. After junior doctors rejected an offer their own leader described back then as the only way forward. He's resigned, but the deal is off. Why was it a no for you?
For me, personally, some of that finer detail in protecting staff, working hours, and ensuring that we try and minimise the staff shortages and the loss of staff that we're seeing, particularly in accident emergencies around the country. It just wasn't there yet.
In all, 58% of the British Medical Association's junior doctors rejected the deal, but only 2/3 of those balloted actually voted, making it a much weaker mandate than the 98% who backed the strikes last year. For the 6,000 staff due to start on new rotas in August, there is now only uncertainty. Yet it seems many junior doctors accepted the new deal on weekend conditions was an improvement on the government's first offer, with Saturdays and Sundays attracting premium pay if they work at least 7 weekends a year. Most do a lot more. But it wasn't enough, to the Health Secretary's palpable disbelief.
They sat around the table and they negotiated a deal which they said was a good deal, and that's now been rejected by the BMA membership, and it makes it very difficult for us as a government to know who we should negotiate with, or indeed whether there's any point in having these negotiations.
It's a desperate blow for England's already overstretched hospitals. In Milton Keynes yesterday, they had their busiest day ever in A&E, and although there are no immediate plans for strike action, the fear is there could be more.
We need to make sure that this contract resolution comes through as quickly as possible. We can't rely on the goodwill of all of the teams forever. We need to get this sorted out, and we need to get it sorted out quickly.
The question is whether enough of the doctors who've pushed so hard against the government's vision of how a 7-day NHS should work now have the appetite to fight on.
OK, Rachel, this is definitely not what Jeremy Hunt wanted, is it? So what happens next in this dispute?
Well, what we expect in the next few days or so is for the government to announce whether or not they do intend to impose that new contract. Tonight, Jeremy Hunt said he needed time to consider the outcome of this vote. But despite some rather more conciliatory language tonight, he said at times that he felt it was more encouraging that more junior doctors had agreed to back this new deal. It's my understanding from those close to him that he is minded to go for the imposition. Now, it will then be up to the new chair of the Junior Doctors Committee to decide what to do in reaction to that in the best interests of doctors. But what's clear right now for patients is that we are once again in uncertain times.
OK, Rachel, thank you.
And teachers across England walked out on strike today as part of a long-running dispute over school funding. Hundreds of schools were closed and lessons disrupted following the action organised by the National Union of Teachers. The Department of Education says the action is both unnecessary and damaging.
The Bank of England today warned an increasing number of households are facing a challenging financial future because of the vote to leave the EU. Its Governor, Mark Carney, has now relaxed lending rules, but he's warned people not to get into too much debt. Our business editor, Joel Hills, is at the Bank of England right now. Joel, yet more concern today from the Governor.
Yeah, look, the Bank of England told us there were economic risks to leaving the European Union. Mark Carney says those risks are now starting to crystallise, and he's moving, reassuringly I suppose, to contain them. 1 million households in Britain have debts which are 4 times income. They are clearly vulnerable. We've been told that interest rates are therefore likely to fall, that bank rates will be cut. And today the Bank of England said it was moving to reduce the amount of capital banks are required to hold back. In the face of persistent uncertainty, the bank wants all banks to continue lending.
When combined with the already strong balance sheets of UK banks, today's action means that those UK households and businesses who want to seize viable opportunities in a post-referendum world can be confident that they will be supported by the financial system.
Now, Joel, the pound fell again to a 31-year low today. How much concern is there that major companies are starting to pull their money out of the UK?
Well, the pound did fall today, and I think if we have a look at what the pound was worth against the dollar and the euro, we can see now where it was before the referendum. Take a look at what has happened since. So on the face of it, not a vote of confidence in the British economy, not great if you're heading abroad. And it is absolutely true that some investors are pulling some money out of some assets in Britain, specifically commercial property. We heard in the last 24 hours from Standard Life, from Aviva, from M&G, who tell us that shopping centre funds are having to be suspended, trading suspended. That's unsettling, but it is not a disaster. And I think what the bank has said today was designed to be reassuring. The message is a weaker pound provides opportunity, and Britain's banks are big enough and robust enough to survive whatever happens next.
OK, Joel Hills in the city, thanks.
Right, still to come on the ITV Evening News, the family's hoping for answers in tomorrow's historic report on the Iraq War.
And the royal message of support on the eve of Wales's Euro 2016 semi-final. We'll find out who it's from, along with the rest of the day's news, straight after the break. Join us then. Hello again, welcome back. It has been more than 6 years in the making, but tomorrow Sir John Chilcot's long-awaited report into the Iraq War will finally be published. It's expected to criticise Tony Blair and to highlight intelligence failures. But it's those who lost family in Iraq who are most desperate for answers. 179 British military personnel died during operations there. The youngest of them just 18. Thousands more were injured in the conflict, which began in March 2003 and lasted for more than 6 years. Our international affairs editor, Raghi Omar, reports.
In a small corner of Carlton Cemetery in Blackpool is a grave that holds the son of Mick and Karen Thornton. Their beloved son, Gunnar Thornton, was just 22. His parents said he loved his career in the army and had just got engaged. Then they received the call every service family dreads.
I had a voicemail on my mobile phone to say that he'd been shot, however, he wasn't dead. But when we got there, they just said it was too late, they needed to switch the machine off.
Like many relatives of the 179 British servicemen and women who died in Iraq, they feel angry at what they perceive to have been a war based on false intelligence. They also say British troops were inadequately equipped to deal with a post-war occupation of the country.
Sending our troops to Iraq totally ill-equipped, and also I think there was a lot of lies told to get us there in the first place, and all the families want now is the truth.
The report is expected to criticise Tony Blair's decision to take Britain to war in 2003. It will also look at the intelligence failings that led to that decision and examine the lack of planning within the military in the years leading up to withdrawal in 2009.
No regrets. Responsibility, but not a regret for removing Saddam Hussein.
This was just one of the key testimonies, Tony Blair before the Chilcot inquiry. It's lasted 7 years, cost £10 million and will run to over 2.5 million words, the equivalent of a dozen of the thickest history books. Criticisms of the military are expected in the Chilcot report, but former veterans say it must not mask the ultimate responsibility of the politicians who are in power. Stuart Reponnes served with the Royal Military Police in Iraq.
I don't think it's fair that politicians get to walk away from it all. You know, Saddam Hussein didn't get to walk away from what he did. So why should our politicians get the same, not get the same?
Iraq was one of the most divisive issues in recent British history. The Chilcot report may not make those divisions over the rights and wrongs of the conflict go away, but families of those who died wanted to answer the questions of why and how the war was prosecuted. Ragioma, ITV News.
The FBI has said Hillary Clinton was extremely careless in her use of her private email accounts while she was Secretary of State. It's been investigating the Democratic presidential candidate for more than a year.
It found she sent or received more than 100 messages containing classified information, but crucially, it did not recommend that she face criminal charges. From Washington, Robert Moore reports.
She will be breathing a monumental sigh of relief. For Hillary Clinton has today, narrowly, survived a scandal that jeopardized her presidential hopes. Her use of a private email server when she was Secretary of State may have displayed reckless judgment, but she will not be prosecuted, according to the FBI director.
As a result, although the Department of Justice makes final decisions on matters like this, we are expressing to Justice our view that no charges are appropriate in this case.
In going through the emails,
the central problem is that Mrs. Clinton was dealing with highly classified information on an email system that was not secure, something she and her advisors should certainly have known.
Any reasonable person in Secretary Clinton's position or in the position of those with whom she was corresponding about those matters should have known that an unclassified system was no place for that conversation.
Hillary Clinton has to go to jail, okay? She has to go to jail. Donald Trump has long accused Mrs. Clinton of blatant dishonesty. And while she now escapes prosecution, Republicans have plenty more ammunition after this FBI probe. It will make an angry and bad-tempered election campaign even more incendiary.
The fact that they even allow her to participate in this race is a disgrace to the United States. It's a disgrace to our nation.
But as she headed onto Air Force One a few minutes ago to start a campaign swing alongside the president, her team was already describing the matter as behind them, hoping it's her last obstacle between her and the Oval Office. Her many critics say the decision reveals how the system is rigged, how Mrs. Clinton is above the law. And while the FBI says its investigation was entirely devoid of politics, it may well have helped determine who becomes the next president of the United States. Robert Moore, ITV News, Washington.
National SATs results for primary schools in England show that barely half of pupils met the new required standard in reading, writing and maths. The figures are the first since a major overhaul of the curriculum in 2014. Teaching unions say this year's tests were shambolic.
And Jose Mourinho says being Manchester United manager doesn't faze him. As he was officially unveiled at Old Trafford, he said he's already set his sights on matching Sir Alex Ferguson's Champions League record.
Well, the clock is ticking down to the biggest game in the history of Welsh football. Wales manager Chris Coleman says he knows his team are underdogs for tomorrow's semi-final against Portugal in Lyon, but he says that doesn't bother him or the team. Our sports editor Steve Scott is at the stadium this evening. Steve, a remarkable story this, and the squad, it seems, in confident mood.
Yeah, I think you're right, Mark. Every time you see this team, this squad together, they seem happy, they seem confident, they seem relaxed, but really they've got every reason to be. The only dampener for them tomorrow is two of their big stars will be missing, and I think they'll particularly miss Aaron Ramsey, who's arguably been their player of the tournament so far. But as for their opponents, Portugal, well, they've hardly set this tournament alight, yet to win inside 90 minutes, but they are here, and they do have Ronaldo, so they will start tomorrow as favourites. Not that that is of any concern at all to the Welsh manager, Chris Coleman.
We'll go into this game as the underdogs. We know that. Portugal have been in 7 semi-finals in big tournaments. They know what this is all about. This is our first one. We'll be the underdogs. No problem. Not a problem.
And Steve, they won't be short of support then?
No, the fans that have already made their mark in this tournament have started arriving. We expect around 15,000 to have tickets inside this stadium. Around 25,000 are travelling. So plenty of support here, plenty of support at home, of course, including a special message from the Prince of Wales this afternoon.
Well, huge good luck is all I can say. People coming again? Yes. No, I'm sure they've got a very good chance of beating Portugal. Everybody will be keeping their fingers crossed.
From the start, this game has been billed as Bale against Ronaldo. I think it might come down to which team manages the expectation of what is such a huge occasion tomorrow the best. And so far, Wales have handled everything that's been thrown their way.
All right, Steve, thank you very much indeed.
And that's all for now. Julie Etchingham's here with news at 10.
But from all the team here, have a very good evening.
Bye-bye.